Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to Insurance for the New Possible, a Chubb conversation. Today, we are joined by Gabriel Lazaro, the head of digital business, oversees general insurance at Chubb, and Geeta Chauhan, a co-founder at HiWiPay. Thank you both very much for doing this today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks to you, Michael
Thanks,
and Geeta.
Michael.
It's great to have you here. Geeta, let's start with you, or maybe just GC. I like that. It was a good one, though. I really liked it. Let's get a bit of your background for some context. How did we get to here?
So I started my career almost a decade ago.
Okay.
And I actually mastered in financial markets. So my very first job was with a bank. Eventually, I realized that number crunching isn't my cup of tea. And then eventually moved into marketing. I was lucky enough that through industry contacts and friends, I was able to get a job in marketing. And since the last 7 years, I stayed out with a company called Atom Technologies, which eventually got sold to Entity Data.
Okay, interesting.
And post the acquisition, we had a term that we had to fill in. And then we realized that, okay, let's move to what next? And that's how HiWi came in.
So talk to me about what this concept of HiWiPay is. What were the things that you and your co-founders were looking at and thought, how can we transform this?
Okay, so all my life, if you see the last 10 decades, I've always been in payments. But they were all domestic payments. And we knew, and I think anybody who's been in India knows, or maybe globally, how efficient Indian domestic payments are, especially with the overcome of UPI. And, from the smallest hawker to a large MNC, I think everybody's evolved when it comes to UPI. I mean, the domestic front, but we saw very little that had happened in cross-border. So because we knew payments well and because we eventually realized that payments is what we understand, let's do payments, but domestic is enough matured. Let's get into international payments. And that's how HiWi came up.
And is UPI something that now connects to other payment systems, like Prompt Pay in Thailand, and I think it's Pay Now in Singapore? Has that been done yet?
Yes. With some countries, yes. So the NPCI, which is the parent body of UPI, has tied up with MAS in order to provide UPI into Singapore. Similarly, they've also tied hands with the Dubai government and recently with the French government. But it's going to take some time, but they're looking at expanding UPI globally.
Got it. Are you familiar with payments and where all this stuff fits in with UPI? And you live in Singapore, right? Is it Pay Now?
Yeah, there are many factors. I think cash has already gone in
Basically,
Singapore, right?
I go into restaurants in Singapore and I'm like, can I pay cash? They're like, no.
No, only think a few hawkers deal with that. And when I moved 3 years ago, I think they are not accepting digital payments. Now they accept. So I think that cash is already gone. So there are many different wallets and payment systems.
And do you find that payment systems is a great, what did we talk about earlier? Like a delivery system for other financial products?
So it's we are in the fintech festival, Money 2020, right? And when I was talking with a person the other day, and you think about money, it's zeros and one are bits, right? Now let's think about that. So the money is bits, so they can scale, is everywhere, right? You think about cloud computer, and where we are right now, money is the same thing, right? It can be everywhere. So it's so easy to move money around and companies like the one that we have here, right? That's a great example of that.
So it's so interesting. I leave my house now, and before I used to think like I need to have my wallet. But, my business partner, Martin, was with me one day, and he was like, oh, you just pay for the BTS with your phone, which I did not know. So I was always like, oh, I don't have any cash on me.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. If you go to China, for example, I was in Shenzhen, that was a few weeks ago, you can pay by the hand.
How does that work?
So it works. That means you just a scan. You go to the 7-Eleven. So you grab something and then you scan your hand and that's done.
So what does it do? Is it taking like the fingerprints and stuff like that?
I think it's the biometric.
Biometric things, and you have it. So quite impressive, right? I think they can do it with the face, but it's too much intrusive. I think the hand is much more.
I think paying with
using the retina. Yeah, I think a lot of companies there are evolving. We've not started with payments yet, because I think RBI as a regulator is takes a lot of time. We'll get there, but I think what is more important is trying to set the processes in place. So with maybe something like an Aadhaar, which is like unified. What do you say? Like a social security number for Indians.
Right.
So I think we are getting there, but there are a few things that we need to take care before we get into a retina payment or a biometric. But as a part of Aadhaar, the government's actually collected your biometrics.
Is this the thing that they've done on the blockchain?
Not really.
Not really, okay.
So if I have to talk about blockchain, I think that's altogether different conversation.
Completely. I was just trying to remember some of the research that I did.
No, not yet. So government is, of course, we're looking at CBDCs right now.
Right.
But that's again with the, there are regulations in place. I mean, the regulation is not in place yet. So it's too early to be speaking about usage of blockchain at this moment.
Got it. So let's talk about HiWiPay again.
Yeah.
You started with students.
Yes.
So you basically had this concept where you said domestic remittances, domestic movement of money, simple. UPI kind of changed everything. And you said whether it's a hawker or like you're the biggest company in India, that all works.
Correct.
But going overseas was hard.
Correct.
So why did you decide you wanted to fix that, and why did you decide you wanted to focus on students?
So I'll come a step before clicking on the send money or the transfer now button.
Please.
So there's a lot of regulation involved. So I think when you talk about outward remittances from India,
right,
it's a lot complex compared to maybe a lot of nations like Singapore or even China for the matter of fact, because the kind of regulatory requirements that we have, whether it's KYC, there's a form called the A2 form, which again is a very lengthy form. And then there are other compliance requirements too. So what happens there is filling out this form actually could be a very tedious affair. And it's actually a Herculean task because you're talking about not 1 or 2 pages, you're talking about 10, 12 pages altogether. And this is every time when you do remittance. So it's not a one-time affair.
So this means that every time you do a remittance as a student, so if I want to pay for Yale or if I want to pay for Berkeley, every time I do that, every
Correct.
semester, every time I have to, and if my parents want to send me money,
Correct.
I have to fill out this A2 form.
Yes.
Okay, that's a pain.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. So like I said, the sending money isn't an issue. This problem is one step prior.
Got it.
How do you actually do it? So what we do at HiWi, we collect the documentation and we do the KYC only once. That's the very first time. And even while we're doing it the very first time, the entire process is so seamless that you're actually just maybe taking pictures, and it is through OCR technology, everything is getting captured. And once that is captured, we store it locally and ensure that we proactively have the A2 form printed or have the A2 form coming out of it every time the student wants to do remittance. So you're no longer actually filling the form every time you're doing transfers.
So it makes it much easier for them.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So how do you get access to the students though?
That's a very interesting thing. So that's actually the entire business model. So we're not focusing directly reaching out to students because B2C, again, if I have to talk from a business model sense, it's a very expensive affair. There's a lot of advertising cost, a lot of other costs that goes in capturing these students. So
right.
For us, the easy trap is the B part, the consultants part. So if I have to talk about the Indian ecosystem, 95% of the students, if you see in India, go abroad with the help of an agent or a consultant. Okay, and on an average, any agent or consultant would be sending across, let's say, somewhere around 100 to thousands of students. So what we do is we focus on capturing these consultants or partnering with these consultants. So let's say I partner with a consultancy called ABC. Once I've actually partnered with them, they route all their students through me.
But what does that mean? So do you give them access to the technology, or you give the students access through technology through them?
So when talking, I spoke about the number that 95% of them go through the consultancy. So data says there are 1 million consultants in the country, but I don't take that seriously because I think anybody who even sends a student once in a year calls himself a consultant, but he's not. He's clearly not. So for us, anybody who sends maybe a minimum 100 students to more is a consultant. So what we do is we provide them a console called the Educon portal. Okay? And what we've done is, let's accept it for any businesses, whether it's small or large. CRM becomes really handy, right? So we've built the system in such a way that we tell him to use it as a CRM, number one. Number two, he can now gain access to all the financial dealings or doings of the students. So initially what used to happen is the traditional consultants will only help you get into a particular university of your choice.
Right.
And then they get commissions from the university, which could range anything between a 10 to 30% of whatever arrangements that they have. Now, if they actually help remit money through us, what they're doing is they're also getting a commission on the FX. So for them, it's a dual income now. So yes, the partnership is rewarding to them because not only is so it's no more fragmented data for him. Back then, he used to maintain Excel sheets. Thanks to the HiWiPay portal, now he can have access to his entire student data. He can see who's doing remittance, who's not. And if somebody is doing remittances, he can actually bag commission for it. Yeah.
Really interesting stuff. But there must be some compliance and regulatory issues here, yeah? Like how do you, because internally I understand like the RBI is going to regulate anything that happens inside the country. They're going to regulate the movement of money outside the country.
Correct.
But what about that money that's getting remitted into like the United States or into Europe or into the UK or into Australia? Do you have regulatory issues you have to solve there as well?
So it's very clear that if you want to remit money outside the country, you need to be AD1, which is Authorized Dealer 1, which is all the large banks in India are AD1s.
For sure.
AD2s are your FX providers and the smaller banks, right? And third is somebody called as FFMC, okay? So only these three entities in the country can actually remit. So far, HiWiPay is not a regulated entity. We do want to get into regulation, but at this point, we're more of a technology partner.
Right.
So unless we do not get... You have to, in order to do remittances, you have to have a partner with the AD1, AD2. So we work with both AD1s and AD2s, and that's how the compliances get taken care of.
Got it. Are there other partners you would want to work with as you expand outside of sort of the student cohort? Right? Because if you think about it, every big Indian company and every small Indian company that supplies things externally is making remittances overseas as well.
Correct.
Right. So the market for that should be huge.
So here, Michael, AD2 cannot do trade remittances. It only has to be a AD1. So it becomes... So one reason why we started with the student ecosystem is it was an easier catch for us.
Yep.
Because even AD2s were allowed to do remittances for students. But when it comes to trade, I think it's only AD1. October 23, RBI rolled out a circular called as PACB, Payment Aggregator for cross-border remittances. It's not out yet, but intent is for anybody who wants to do remittances needs to comply or be regulated by or needs to be following PACB.
Right. But does that require the same forms that you were talking about before, these A2 forms?
So A2 is for LRS. So LRS is actually liberalized remittance scheme. Okay.
How do you keep track of all this? No, I'm impressed actually. How do you keep track of all
the thing is, trade remittances and student remittances are not the same. So they have separate set of regulations. The entities who can do it are same, but it's very different from trade remittances. Yeah.
Got it. And when you think about moving forward, right? As you become a regulated entity, if you have access to 1,000 or more agents who have access to 1,000 or thousands more students, now you're talking about numbers in the millions.
Correct.
If you have access to millions of people, what other services can you offer them?
We've actually already started offering. So for us, we don't just restrict ourselves to remittances.
Go ahead.
We do provide VAS to the students. And think about it from a student side. He's anyways nervous. He's leaving his home and he's going abroad hundreds and thousands of miles away.
Yep.
How do we bundle up the entire financial requirement for him? So what we do is we've partnered with banks in the US, UK, Australia, and all the key geographies. So India, I'll just a little stats there. India sends in roughly around, more than 1 million students, and by 2025, early 2025, you'll have more than 2 million students studying outside of the country.
It's a lot of people.
That's a lot of students. Actually, we've surpassed China. I think China used to be the one that with the highest number of students outside.
Go ahead.
So now, the point that I'm trying to make here is, if so many students are actually going out, there's a lot of things that is required that can be given to them as a VAS. So one is opening. Can I help them open a bank account even before they set foot outside the country? So we've bundled it with bank accounts. We've also these regular bank. And for why would a bank work with us? I think it becomes very easy for a bank to catch hold of the students before their competition does.
Sure.
So it's like saying, catch them young and watch them grow, sort of a thing. Opening of bank account, including giving them secured solutions like secured mortgages, because let's say a country like Canada, where the public transportation is very fragmented, a student would eventually want to buy a car. So you're actually helping the student tap into the entire ecosystem much before than they actually can.
Right. And what other financial services do you consider offering them? I mean, this seems like a perfect entry point to talk about insurance.
No, thank you. No, it's a great point, right? And overall, I think I was reading this morning from some analysts, I think it's $1.3 trillion. I think the overall remittance market growing 10% yearly.
Wow,
so
it's huge.
Massive, huge market, right? And there are many factors that help to that growth. The mobile penetration, right? How the economy is moving, right, with different locations, etc. And at Chab, we really focus on providing solutions and pain points, right? And the two sides of the ecosystem. One is the person who goes overseas and think about solutions like travel insurance, medical insurance, health, the whole thing that those people that are moving from their home countries and going abroad, that they want to really be protected, right? But also when we talk about remittance, there are different segments within remittance, right? So there are kind of the workers, kind of blue collars, white collars, etc., right? And then people who send also money home. Right? Imagine those kind of, it's different segment from the one that you have, but also people who send money home, and what happens if that person gets sick or cannot work, right? There are families that are relying on that. So how can we protect that, right?
Yeah.
And now also think about the other side of the equation, people who is receiving the money, right? And there is certain parts of the world that means getting cash and moving cash around is not safe. So how can we protect those when you withdraw the cash to something goes wrong? And also how can you protect all the family, right? If you are working abroad and you have your family in your home country, so how can you make sure, right, that so the part of the remittance goes and reduce the protection gap? So
yeah. And you also talked about, like, if you get them early, you can watch them grow into like bigger customers for
Correct.
a bunch of different products, right? I wonder, and I don't know what the statistics are here, but I wonder what percentage of those students, if it's going to be 2 million by 2025, if it's going to be the largest student kind of traveling cohort in the world, even larger than China, I wonder what percentage of those students actually stay in the country where they get educated. Do you know what I mean? And then build a family there.
Correct.
And then need all these other types of financial services,
right.
whether it's investing or whether it's insurance for them and their, like, it just seems to me there's a massive amount of potential growth here if you can actually get them early. Go ahead.
So so here, Michael, one thing is very clear. Majority of the students actually want to leave the country because of better opportunities outside.
Fair enough.
Study is just a mode. It's an easy entrance for them. Yeah.
Right. That's the point.
Yeah. But eventually, I think everybody is looking at becoming PR residents or citizens in that particular country. So if you actually see majority of the students that actually go to Canada and Australia end up trying to work there, live there, and not come back. But you also need to realize that I think if you look at the data right now, India was the recipient to more than 100 billion USD, which is the largest in the world.
You're talking about remittances coming back from overseas.
Money that's coming from. So it is the student who's going out now, eventually is the one who's sending money back. So for now, the one who's doing outward remittances, let's say I'm a student, I'm going abroad for the first year, I have my parents sending me money, I'm sending money to the university, but eventually once I get a job, I'm the one who's sending money back home.
Right.
So for us, I think the one who's sending money now out is the one who's actually going to be sending back home. So for us, I think the whole intent of somebody who's going out is to settle abroad. Very few of them actually come back. I can't really give you numbers, but yeah, we've seen that sort of traction there.
I feel like I was one of those guys who left his country to get educated and just has not gone back. Has not gone back. But I guess the reason why the insurance angle is so interesting to me, right, is because, again, for years I've lived outside my home country. And one of the biggest things that I care about is when I travel and my health and stuff like that. And as a foreigner, being able to just get access to those types of products. But you have a natural base that every year grows by 1 million or 2 million. It seems like the natural entry point for a whole host of other financial services.
Sure.
Because what's the key to getting people to work with you, particularly when it comes to money? It's trust.
That's right.
Right? And if you can get people to trust you, well, then you can provide them with a whole host of other financial services,
right.
Yeah?
No, and that's when I think also when insurance plays a role, building that trust and adding value to this network of companies that facilitate that transaction of money and bringing that value and bringing trust and credibility, right, to the organization that is enabled that transaction.
We actually, I think it is trust because, one part of the value-added services that we give is insurance.
Right.
And we do push the students. A lot of time people say, oh, is it required, etc. I mean, for instance, I flew day before yesterday, right? I would never leave the country without taking a travel insurance. Right. And we tell that to everybody.
Right.
A lot of people, you will be surprised, Michael, to see even some really educated people, they're like, it's a 4-day trip. What's going to go wrong in a 4-day trip? But
the better question is, what can go wrong? Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like saying, a lot of people don't take term insurance or health insurance. Oh, I'm not going to die tomorrow. I'm only in my 20s. I'm like, so what? And especially with term insurances, because you pay the premium every year, people say, oh, that money is going to go waste because, nothing is going to go. I'm like, okay, what sort of a thought process? Insurance is supposed to protect you, to take care of your loved ones, to take care of your health and other aspects in life. You can't be expecting, oh, it's not going to give me any return. So I think the thought process, so here we're trying to educate students that it's very important that you get insured before you set foot outside the country, because you never know what could go wrong.
Yeah, so that's totally amazing. We have research that prove that. I think also consumers want it, right? I think it was in the survey that we did with fintechs, I think 73% of the consumers think that insurance can add value. So platforms like yours and others, I think there is a good way to educate customers in the moment, right? That they are moving overseas with a good offering about insurance, with a good value proposition, and really, help them to educate that is worth the protection if they are going to be outside of the country for a while.
Is there a technological innovation that you're working on here as well? I mean, besides just the reading and the creating of the documentation, to me, that's like kind of the gateway into all these other services that you can provide, yeah?
So right now we're actually testing out on usage of blockchain. And we're also keenly looking at participating in various regulatory sandboxes, because RBI right now is very proactive and inviting a lot of fintechs to be a part of their sandboxes for CBDCs. Right. But our only issue right now, Michael, with using blockchain is until it's not regulated yet, right? So you're not talking about maybe just a couple of dollars. You're talking about the average fees is anything about $25,000, and that to a tier C or a tier D college. You're not even talking about a tier 1 college. So our issue is we'll wait till the time the segment gets regulated, number one. And number two, for us, we have to be very, very sure, because we are dealing with a large sum of money there. But yes, having said that, we are, we're trying to get into sandboxes. We're trying to develop parallelly all these technologies that we can think will actually help us in remitting.
And where do you see most of your growth internally? Like, I think a lot about tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities.
Tier 2 cities. I'll tell you, you'll be surprised with the number of students that are actually going out. People have this natural tendency that only people from metros, Mumbai, Delhi, etc. No. If you see the kind of growth that we've seen in tier 2 cities, because the aspiration level is very high.
Is it?
Yeah. So I'll give you instances, cities like Punjab, cities like, states like Punjab or Gujarat, where, when one person from that particular town moves, moves, he takes around the entire Jingbang with him. So that's the aspiration level is very high in smaller cities, and I think everybody wants a great standard of living or wants to get the quality of living better by going.
So is part of the stuff that you're doing, though, also providing sort of financial education to them?
Yes.
Because you've already talked about this in the context of, insurance as well, right? Where we know that to get the right level of penetration, we can't just offer products. You have to offer the literacy, get them to understand what the product's for. You were talking about this before. Is that different in tier 2 and tier 3 than it is in tier 1?
Yes, it's very. So tier 1 kids, or rather tier 1 parents, kids, whoever is interested in the space, they read. There's a lot of reading that's involved. They speak to people, meet people. And I think bankers put a lot of emphasis in trying to give the best possible solutions to the metro guys. But it's the tier 2 city guys. Of course, thanks to internet penetration in the country, now everybody's can actually go online and read stuff. But I think having a human to actually tell you, or having somebody to actually give you the direction, I think it's equally important. So what we try to do is we try to speak to the students. We try to host webinars. We try to conduct classes, telling them what should be the right way of financially taking care of all the things that you require before you set foot outside the country.
And having protection for that as well. Yeah, absolutely. So are there other cohorts that you're considering, in the sense that a lot of other people travel from big companies outside the country and run into the same issues, right? So they have to fill out the same forms and do the same things that students do. Do you know what I mean? There are big Indian companies that send people overseas.
Correct.
Is it the same process?
No. So, for example, that would be a business trip. A business trip is very different from...
I'm talking about like a expatriation. So like you work for Tata.
Okay.
And they open an office in San Francisco or in Chicago, and you're going to be there for 2 or 3 years. Or even, it's back to students as well, but like they want their employees to get an MBA, right? And then they send them to Chicago, they get their MBA, and then they work in the United States, still for the same company. Is that also a possibility as well?
There is. For example, when we actually start the trade bit, we're not just looking at the the regular payouts or receivables, but we also want to capture this segment too.
Okay. And you're working on that as well.
Yeah.
Who competes with you?
There are, honestly, like I said, remittance is core and the other businesses are vast. We've got players who are looking at different products, but nobody is consolidated and doing the entire thing. So at this stage, I'll say that, everybody is doing bits and pieces, but not everybody is doing the entire lot.
Thank you very much. Gabriel Lazaro, Head of Digital Business Overseas General Insurance at Chubb, and Geeta Chauhan, a co-founder at HiWiPay. Thank you both very much for doing this.
Thank you, Michael, for having us.
Thank you.